Have you ever wondered why certain women, regardless of age, fashion, or noise, seem to bend a room's gravity toward themselves? They do not demand attention, they anchor it. Men track them without understanding why, and women feel a curious relief in their presence, as if someone just dimmed the chaos and lit a candle. Through a Jungian lens, this magnetism is not luck, nor shallow charm, it is the radiance of a psyche that has made a long pilgrimage into its own depths and returned with sovereignty. The mature woman who is truly irresistible has not merely collected pretty traits, she has transmuted opposites, softness with steel, eros with logos, instinct with insight. She is the woman whose shadow no longer hunts from behind her, it walks beside her like a trained panther. What makes her impossible to forget is not a trick. It is habit, daily, deliberate ways of being that sculpt the nervous system and teach the soul how to sit on its rightful throne. Before a word is spoken, the atmosphere says everything, a composure that whispers, there is nothing here to conquer, there is only something to meet. Men feel it first as quiet pressure in the chest, then as wonder, who is she when no one is watching? You notice it too, because somewhere in the body a wiser self recognizes home. This is individuation made visible, psyche moving toward wholeness, anima and animus no longer at war but working as partners inside a single temple. Her first habit is radical self-ownership. She does not outsource value to attention or chase after the next spark to numb boredom. She has done the unglamorous work of shadow, naming envy without shame, confronting control without self-hatred, seeing the little dramas the ego sets on fire just to feel alive. By holding her contradictions instead of denying them, she becomes unconfusing to herself, and therefore hypnotic to others. Projection loses its fuel. A man who meets her cannot easily cast his unfinished mother or savior onto her, because she refuses both pedestals and pits. She will not play goddess, and she will not play wound. The calm that follows feels like oxygen. This self-ownership is not an icy independence, it is intimate discipline. Stoic in essence, feminine in expression, it echoes a simple principle, nothing external is truly controllable, but the response is always hers. She will not react to a text like a fire alarm, nor collapse into a test she never agreed to take. When provocation arrives, she pauses. Breath lengthens. The nervous system listens. That pause is eros, because eros is deep attention, and attention is the rarest form of love. Men interpret it as mystery, but it is simply mastery, the refusal to be yanked by impulse or hooked by bait. You feel it as dignity returning to the bones. Her second habit is sacred boundary as invitation. Boundary is not a wall, it is a doorway with a clear threshold. She does not shout no to prove power, she speaks no to protect meaning. Value requires edges. When a man encounters her limit, he does not meet punishment, he meets form. Form arouses masculinity because it gives direction to energy. This is why the irresistible woman can be both warm and unyielding in the same breath. Here, her posture says, is the field where a real meeting is possible, and here is where it is not. In that clarity, games wither. Performers get bored and leave. Men who are ready step forward taller. Her third habit is unhurried presence. She moves in time rather than against it, letting moments ripen before she tastes them. The modern world confuses speed with substance, she does not. She understands that desire matures in space, and that silence is not a punishment but a kiln. When conversation lulls, she does not scramble to fill it, she lets the unsaid tell its truth. When attraction rises, she does not sprint to the endpoint, she explores tension like a musician holding a note until it blooms into harmony. This is not withholding, it is orchestration. Pacing is a deeply feminine art, the art that births seasons, not sparks. Her fourth habit is embodied sincerity. She has very little performance left in her. If laughter comes, it comes from the belly, if grief surfaces, it is washed, not weaponized. Men think they are mesmerized by beauty, but the nervous system is mesmerized by congruence, the alignment of face, tone, gesture, and intention. She is that alignment. The anima in her does not seduce through costume, it seduces through coherence. Eyes that actually see. Words that match the pulse beneath them. Touch that is given, not traded. In this coherence, trauma patterns find either a mirror or a mercy, they can repeat or they can repair. Many choose to repair without quite knowing why. And you, reading this, are not separate from her. The same blueprint lives in your depths. The question is not whether magnetism is possible, but whether the quiet labor will be done. Are you willing to sit with your shadow rather than projecting it onto the next man who fails your fantasy? Are you ready to use "no" as a love letter to your future instead of a punishment for your past? Can you bear the discomfort of silence long enough for power to return to your center? The mature woman does not wait for permission to become her final form. She practices. She reclaims. She chooses. From embodied sincerity grows a fierce and gentle discipline, the capacity to meet a man's energy without either shrinking or swallowing it. Her fifth habit is clean polarity. She does not compete with the masculine in him, nor collapse beneath it, she meets it with a calibrated feminine that is neither coy nor compliant. This is not a costume of softness, it is the living interplay of anima and animus made conscious. Within her, the inner masculine has taken his rightful seat as structure, direction, and discernment, the inner feminine flows as intuition, nourishment, and creative chaos. Because her inner marriage is underway, she does not depend on a partner to complete a circuit she has never touched. When a man approaches, he is not asked to fix an absence, he is invited to amplify a fullness. That invitation is intoxicating because it carries no hidden invoice. Clean polarity expresses as 1,000 small gestures that the body understands before the mind explains. She listens without trying to win. She speaks without trying to wound. She allows disagreement to clarify essence rather than threaten identity. She honors masculine gifts, initiative, mission, containment, without forfeiting feminine power, receptivity, mystery, cyclical wisdom. In her presence, posturing exhausts itself. The man either rises into integrity or drifts away from the field, and both outcomes are merciful. You can feel this possibility in your own bones, the chance to stop arguing with gravity and start dancing with it. Consider what would change if your inner father and inner mother stopped litigating and began building. The sixth habit grows from a deeper vow, devotion to meaning over momentum. The mature woman is not merely chasing experiences, she is curating a myth. She understands what Jung insisted, that life is less a problem to be solved than a mystery to be lived. Because she is animated by telos rather than trend, she becomes immune to the frantic economy of validation. She trades spectacle for symbol, urgency for orientation. This is why she can leave messages unanswered without cruelty, why she can end a conversation that flatters her but betrays her future, why she can leave a table where the food is warm but the soul is starving. The choice disarms manipulation, it tells every room, I belong to something larger than your approval. Devotion to meaning is not abstract. It sounds like reading that changes the spine, friendships that comfort without collusion, work that requires courage, rituals that stitch the day to the divine. It looks like sleep that is not negotiated, movement that praises the body rather than punishes it, nourishment chosen for clarity instead of punishment for shame. It feels like calm that remains when plans dissolve. Epictetus would call it attention to what is within control, Seneca would call it the shortness of life guarded from trivia, Marcus would call it alignment with nature. In relationship, this devotion makes her luminous, she can be delighted by a man without being derailed by him. Delight is powerful precisely because it is free. When conflict arrives, and it always does, she welcomes it as revelation, not apocalypse. Shadow is not an enemy, it is information. She notices the part of her that wants to punish and the part that wants to disappear, then she chooses the third path, truth with care. This is what matters, this is what hurts, this is what will not continue. Suddenly the dance becomes honest. Many men have never met a woman who can navigate rupture without theatricality. The nervous system hears that steadiness and relaxes, which paradoxically creates more eros, because Eros thrives where there is safety for risk. You recognize this, because somewhere within you is the hunger for a love that does not dismantle your self-respect to keep the peace. One more quality unfolds from these habits like fragrance from fire, playful gravity. She is serious about essence and light about ego. She can laugh at her patterns once they're named, and she can celebrate progress without choreographing praise. Play signals abundance to the body. It loosens compulsive control, the hallmark of fear. In play, she gives the masculine a gift rarer than admiration, room. Room to try and fail. Room to approach without being ambushed by old prosecutions. Room to be a man who is growing, not a statue who must already be perfect. That room is irresistible because it is the environment where respect and desire can coexist without bartering. None of this is mystical access reserved for a chosen few. It is practice, and the psyche honors what is practiced. Look at your week and ask where meaning is being traded for momentum. Notice where polarity turns into performance, and where boundary turns into battle. Replace one performance with sincerity. Replace one urgency with orientation. Replace one defense with a deeper breath. The shift will not announce itself with fireworks, it will settle in like trustworthy weather. People will not be able to name why they feel steadier around you. They will simply remember you more than they meant to. What follows, almost inevitably, is the way men reorganize around such gravity. Some attempt conquest, arriving with practiced charm and a restless gaze that searches for an angle. The performance dissolves as soon as it meets her coherence. Attention that expected to feast on insecurity finds no table. Others, used to avoidance disguised as independence, circle and recede, yet the strange comfort of her steadiness exposes the cost of their distance. They feel the ache of possibility. A third kind, fewer, quieter, steps forward with a chest that is not inflated but open. Integrity recognizes an invitation to become more, not to win more. This is where polarity turns noble. This is where the myth of hunter and prey is replaced by the reality of partner and path. In the early rhythm of courting, her habits announce themselves without slogans. If a call is missed, there is no melodrama, there is clarity. If plans shift, there is a simple reweaving of the day instead of a tempest. She does not audition for a role she never wants to play. She lets him see who she is in ordinary moments, the way she tends a conversation like a garden, the way she declines flattery that has no truth in it, the way she ends an evening while desire is still expanding rather than when it has already hardened into demand. This restraint is eros with boundaries, devotion with direction. It confuses the boyish psyche that equates love with possession, and it awakens the masculine that longs to be received by something real. Under stress, her nervous system chooses principle over performance. Anger is allowed, but it does not become a theater. Withdrawal is possible, but it does not become a punishment. She names the pattern without crucifying the person. There is care here, there is also a line. The statement lands like architecture for the relationship. Marcus Aurelius would call it keeping the citadel of the mind, Jung would call it meeting the complex with consciousness. When a father wound in him surges forward, demanding proof through chaos, she does not become the mother who overfunctions, nor the witch who humiliates. She becomes the witness who requires repair to be real. He meets adulthood at that threshold or he leaves. Either way, she remains intact. Her feminine shadow has been studied, not staged. She recognizes the temptation to manipulate through scarcity, to withhold warmth as leverage, to orchestrate jealousy to feel powerful. She has seen how that collapses into loneliness wrapped in fireworks. So she chooses another path. She does not confuse unpredictability with magnetism. She seeks depth, not drama, aliveness, not adrenaline. This is why her presence feels both exciting and trustworthy, like a storm that delivers rain without ripping up the trees. The body reads that forecast and settles. In that settled place, truth becomes erotic, the truth that he is responsible for his effort, and she is responsible for her standard. Daily life is her monastery. She keeps rituals that fortify sovereignty, breath that lengthens the space between trigger and choice, movement that celebrates the body instead of punishing it for not being an advertisement, reading that sharpens discernment, solitude that keeps the inner voice audible under the market's roar. She curates a circle where gossip dies and accountability survives. The women beside her are not props, they are witnesses and midwives. With them she can grieve without collapsing and laugh without strategy. Such friendships are sacred technology. They hold her steady when romance tries to make her forget herself. She knows endings as initiations. When a bond must close, she does not vandalize it to justify leaving. She completes it with the least residue possible, belongings returned, gratitude named where it is true, harm acknowledged where it occurred, the door shut without a monologue to the crowd. Grief becomes clean fuel. Shame becomes compost. Out of this, she grows a rarer fragrance, forgiveness that does not offer reunion, mercy that does not abandon self-respect. Men remember this long after they forget who was right. The psyche remembers the absence of spectacle and begins to hunger for that kind of quiet power. You can begin anywhere. Begin with one conversation that tells the unembellished truth and trusts your worth to hold the response. Begin with 1 hour reclaimed from digital noise and given to the soul's work. Begin with one decision that chooses long-term coherence over short-term chemistry. Notice the impulse to perform and let it pass like weather. Feel the urge to chase and let it dissolve into breath. When silence appears, treat it as a throne room, not a courtroom. When desire rises, let it ripen instead of harvesting it green. The changes will be small and seismic at once. Rooms will feel different around you. Invitations will take on a new tone, fewer, richer, cleaner. In time, the woman shaped by these habits becomes a mirror people cannot tolerate or cannot leave. Some retreat because the cost of self-avoidance is suddenly visible. Others step closer because the cost of self-abandonment is finally too high. She does not manage either reaction. She lives her way and allows fate to bring its equals. That is the hidden law her life proves again and again: what aligns, remains; what does not, reveals itself by trying to bargain. She does not bargain. She blesses and continues. As days turn into a life, her magnetism expands beyond romance into every room where purpose is negotiated. Colleagues find themselves adjusting tone, not from fear but from relief. Posturing becomes unnecessary when someone arrives who does not barter truth for belonging. Leadership emerges as a side effect of inner order. She does not command, she sets a cadence that the nervous system trusts. Deadlines feel less like whips and more like rivers with banks. In her presence, competing egos soften into agreements because she treats human dignity as non-negotiable while treating preferences as negotiable. People sense the difference and move accordingly. Influence, for her, is not the power to make others bend, it is the gravity that helps scattered parts cohere. Praise and criticism, the twin narcotics of the age, lose their chemical hold. She receives praise without inhaling it, criticism without becoming it. The Stoics would call this keeping her ruling faculty. Jung would call it ego in service to the self rather than pretending to be the self. She does not swing on the hook of the algorithm. Devices serve meaning, not the reverse. Notifications are not permission slips to abandon the soul mid-sentence. Attention is wealth, and she budgets it with reverence. A day that protects attention becomes a sanctuary, a life that protects attention becomes a myth. Those who hope to capture her with noise learn that silence is her sovereign ally. Her sexuality is not a performance, it is a liturgy. Eros, in her, is not designed to capture, it is designed to awaken. She honors pacing as a priestess honors sequence: preparation, invitation, surrender, integration. After ecstasy, there is tending. After rupture, there is repair or release. She refuses the mother-son bargain where intimacy becomes caretaking and desire dies under debt. She also refuses the queen-servant fantasy where dominance masquerades as depth. She prefers initiation, two adults stepping into a field where truth heightens pleasure and boundaries multiply freedom. A man who enters that field feels the relief of being seen and the challenge of being called. The adolescent in him learns reverence or retreats, either path clarifies the landscape. Family ghosts knock, as they do for everyone. She meets them not with exile but with appointment. The child who was overlooked is gathered, the teenager who learned seduction as survival is taught safer dances, the protector who became a judge is given a smaller bench. She practices reparenting without theatrics, replacing inherited scripts with vows, no drama for belonging. No self-betrayal for peace. No spectacle for significance. Resentment, once a furnace, becomes information. Forgiveness is offered not to absolve harm but to end the contract, so energy can return to building rather than rehearsing. This is not amnesia, it is authority over narrative. Blood is honored where it deserves honor and released where it demands a self-erasure she will not perform. Envy is transmuted into direction. When comparison bites, she asks the only useful question: what exactly is being admired beneath the ache? Skill. Discipline. Courage. She converts that signal into practice instead of poison. The shadow that once whispered, compete, learns to whisper, create. Out of this alchemy grows a rare sisterhood. With women, she chooses witness over rivalry, celebration over surveillance. They magnify each other's radiance, not through slogans but through structure, shared rituals, honest feedback, mutual guardrails. In such company, the old scarcity spell breaks, beauty multiplies because it is not hoarded. Men feel the change without naming it, it is intoxicating to encounter a woman whose alliances deepen, rather than threaten, her desire. Decision is her oracle. She does not outsource major choices to moods or omens dressed as certainty. She listens to dreams and synchronicities, but she tests them against values that have survived weather. The inner masculine evaluates, the inner feminine intuits, the self synthesizes. When the path is unclear, she does not manufacture urgency to escape ambiguity. Uncertainty becomes a forge for character, not a panic room for control. She allows life to be seasonal, sowing, tending, harvesting, fallowing. In fallow times, she resists the impulse to prove worth through busyness. In abundant times, she resists the temptation to dilute standards for the sake of applause. This rhythm makes her resilient rather than brittle, movable without being moved off-center. You know this rhythm because the body recognizes truth before the mind drafts commentary. Begin where breath is shortest. Lengthen it. Notice where technology hijacks attention, put a boundary there tomorrow morning, not someday. Replace impressive with congruent once today, even if only in a single sentence sent without embellishment. Refuse the bait of making someone wrong just to feel right, choose the harder task of being clear without cruelty. If jealousy arrives, track it to a missing practice and install one small habit. If loneliness visits, give it a chair and a meal, then take it on a walk and introduce it to sunlight and movement. This is how a myth is made, not with a grand gesture, but with 1,000 loyal choices that teach the soul it can trust you. Over time, this steadiness becomes a sanctuary others cannot forget. Lovers, friends, strangers, each leaves carrying a memory of calm that did not coddle and challenge that did not humiliate. The psyche imprints on environments that allow dignity to breathe. That is the secret influence of a mature woman, the world rearranges to match the order within her. Not instantly. Not without loss. But reliably, like tides learning the moon again. Those who cannot tolerate truth will call her cold, those who cannot tolerate boundaries will call her controlling. Names are weather. Essence is climate. She lives for climate. By now her days carry the hush of a garden at dawn, alive, deliberate, unhurried. The old compulsion to be watched dissolves into the simpler wish to be true. Even pleasure changes shape. It is no longer chased like prey, it comes when invited by order, by rest, by a body that trusts its keeper. She becomes the sort of woman who can sit alone at a cafe and soften the mood of an entire street without trying. Not because she is unreachable, but because she is unhooked. The anima in her is no longer bait, it is blessing. The inner masculine, seasoned by stoic discipline, tends the perimeter with quiet vigilance. Between them, a kingdom forms, boundaries as bridges, desire as devotion, love as lucid choice rather than emergency. The nervous system remembers what the mind forgets, peace is erotic. A man feels it before language, how her stillness does not pull on him, how her attention does not audition, how her warmth is given without needing to be purchased by spectacle. He tastes the difference between belonging and being consumed, and he stands taller. Even those who cannot name it treat her differently. Respect gathers, not because she demands it, but because she does not barter for it. She has ended the contract with chaos, and chaos knows to pass her by. In the quiet, her soul resumes older work. Dreams visit with honest symbols, the body answers with honest signals. When a yes arises, it feels like a river remembering its course. When a no arises, it feels like a gate closing with love. Fate becomes a companion, not a tyrant. Jung would say the self is steering, Epictetus would add that externals are not her masters. She blesses what comes without clutching, and she blesses what goes without cursing. The world calls this detachment, it is, more precisely, right attachment, to values that survive weather, to meaning that does not need audience, to a life that remains itself even when no one applauds. She learns to end pursuit of the unavailable, not with bitterness but with math, effort invested must produce reality, not fantasy. She no longer glamorizes the wound that refuses to heal because it provides an identity. She chooses repair over repetition, presence over performance, craft over chaos. This sobriety is not cold, it is freshly warm. It frees play from panic. It allows tenderness to return without the invoice of self-betrayal. Eros, relieved of proving, becomes light again, curiosity, humor, the eyes that smile before the mouth does. The feminine in her remains mystery, but it is no longer a maze, it is a path through a forest tended by hands that honor seasons. With women, alliance replaces theater. There is room for brilliance without apology, beauty without competition, grief without spectacle. They protect each other from the smallness that algorithms reward. They say, choose your myth, and then they help each other keep it when distraction comes dressed as destiny. Such sisterhood multiplies her radiance in ways no romance can replicate. Men feel this lattice of loyalty and relax, the burden of being her entire world is gone. He can be a man, not a universe. He can offer his mission, not his performance. If he is not ready, she does not condemn him, she releases him to the teacher he has chosen, time. When the past knocks with its old bargains, she no longer opens the door out of habit. She honors what was learned and lets the rest decompose. Forgiveness becomes architecture, enough to hold the heart open, not enough to invite invasion. The inner child is not staged for sympathy, she is kept safe. The inner protector is not licensed to punish, he is trained to discern. The inner lover is not starved to make her dramatic, she is fed so she can sing. This is the rebirth the psyche recognizes, not a reinvention that erases history, but an integration that gives it rightful place on the shelf, labeled and quiet. You can taste this horizon from where you stand. It is closer than the story says. Choose one act of coherence today that asks for no witness. Choose one quiet boundary that protects your future from your impulse. Choose one joy that strengthens you rather than dazzling others. Let desire approach like weather, greet it, study it, and decide. If a man arrives, meet him as a woman already met by her own life. If he does not arrive, let your days become the lover you thought you needed. In that devotion, hunger becomes guidance, and longing becomes prayer that makes you more faithful to yourself than to any outcome. When the myth completes its circle, there is nothing left to prove. Love, work, friendship, solitude, each becomes a place to practice the same vow, no abandoning the self for the promise of being seen. The world keeps moving with its demands for speed and spectacle, she moves with her own weather, carrying a climate others cherish. Some will call it luck. Some will call it magic. Those words are too small. It is practice. It is patience. It is power that forgot how to beg. The woman in her power refuses the chase, she makes the choice.